Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are reviewing the latest Marvel film, Deadpool and Wolverine, and we are joined by a very special guest. We're so excited to have him on the pod. We've been following all of his work for a long time. Kenny, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Kenny Sparks. I am a YouTuber. I do movie reviews, trailer reactions. Also, I do things called video essays, which is not something I invented, so I don't know why I said it like that. You can find me on YouTube. You can also find me on Threads. And yeah, I just love talking movies and talking to people who love movies about movies. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. I cannot wait to dig into this film.
Yeah, and we are going to dive right into this film. We're excited to have a new movie friend on the pod to review this one together, so it'll be a good time. Okay, Sarah, kick us off with an IMDb summary for Deadpool and Wolverine.
Deadpool is offered a place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe by the Time Variance Authority, but instead recruits a variant of Wolverine to save his universe from extinction.
All right. And in Movies and Us tradition, we are going to start off our episode with our one-sentence summaries. And as our guest, Kenny, do you want to share yours for Deadpool and Wolverine?
Absolutely. Deadpool and Wolverine, a laugh-out-loud adventure about two immortal killing machines whose most formidable enemy is the plot.
Well played. Oh my gosh. Wow. Lots to unpack there. Oh, good. So good. Well played. Sarah, what is yours?
Mine is Deadpool's got 99 problems, but a cameo ain't one.
That is amazing.
Nice.
That is great. I love that.
Oh, it's so good. Mine is a question. Is this a cheap nostalgia trip or the educated wish of all of us 2000s kids?
Nice.
I understood that reference. That's good.
Okay, we're going to dive in and start off with our high-level thoughts about Deadpool and Wolverine. And as you all share, it would be great to also share the context of, have you followed all of the X-Men universe and Marvel and what your relationship is to that? Because I think it's helpful backdrop for all of our thoughts and opinions. Definitely will frame some of my thoughts about this movie too. So, Kenny, do you want to share first? What's your relationship to Wolverine as a character, the X-Men franchise, and then with Marvel as well? And then how did this movie work for you?
Sure. Yeah, so I can honestly say that from the mid 90s, the show that just was continued from the 90s, X-Men 97, I started out all of my X-Men love with the Fox X-Men animated series, as well as Spider-Man and all those animated series back then. So I was introduced to all these Marvel characters way back in the 90s. Before I ever picked up a comic book, I was watching the cartoons. And then I did pick up a comic book, and that was fun when I could afford them because they were not cheap, especially for a child. So I don't know why I said it like that. So I've also followed all of the X-Men movies, the Spider-Man movies. I had the privilege of, especially coming into these movies that are really heavy on nostalgia and bringing back old characters who we never thought would be brought into the MCU. I've had the pleasure of watching pretty much all of those movies leading up to this. So I've been kind of rewarded for that. So in a sense, this movie is just another chapter in all of that following of the superhero genre. So high level thoughts, not going to get into who shows up right now. But at the same time, I will say I was pleased with the people who did show up in their many different forms. And yeah, overall, this film was a lot of fun. I laughed a lot. And it was very much like a few movies I've seen this year. And that includes Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, where I left the theater and said, oh man, I had a really fun time with that. And then as time went on, I was like, wait a minute, I don't know about that. Now that I think about it, so I've had that kind of dual experience with this film as well, where I don't want to go on the internet and like be a curmudgeon when everybody's having fun about it. But I'm like, yeah, that was good. I had fun, but just like a candy bar in a sense, it tastes really good, but you know it's probably not good for you. And that's not to say that this movie isn't good for you. It's just that there's no real
Substance.
substance here.
Mm.
Um, but that's okay. You're allowed to have candy bars. Not everything has to be, you know, kale. That's not a shot at you, Sarah, at all. Not everything has to be kale. Uh, but yeah, so just beginning high level thoughts, like
Mm.
that is pretty much my experience with the film. A lot of fun, but when I put on my thinking cap, it doesn't hold up as well.
Love it. Love it. And we will dive into some of those pieces that maybe didn't work totally for you as you like
Hmm.
had time to sit with it a little bit longer. That definitely happens to me with
Yeah.
movies a lot. Sarah knows I'll like rate a movie on Letterbox like 4 stars, 5 stars. I go back like 2 months later and I'm like, I don't think that was that. Like the glow, the post movie glow is so real. There's some movies that
Yeah.
I've been like, this is going to be my top 10 list at the end of the year, and then like a month goes by, and I'm like, oh, I don't think so. So that's
Right.
indicative of how fun the experience was for you in the moment. Just like you're having a great time and you're
Yeah.
laughing out loud at the movies, which is all we could ever want anyway. But I'm excited to see what parts maybe like fell apart with you as the thinking cap came on. Sarah, what did you think about Deadpool and Wolverine, and then against the backdrop of maybe your relationship to X-Men, Wolverine, Deadpool, Marvel in general?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the Marvel movies. I watched, the X-Men movies of the early 2000s. I don't think I've seen all of them because there were a lot. But I've definitely seen like the original handful. So I was really excited for Hugh Jackman to come back as Wolverine. I loved Logan, and that was such a good fitting death for that character. It was a good like retirement for Hugh Jackman from that character. And so the idea of like him being able to come back in this movie was really exciting. Enjoyed the first two Deadpool movies as well. So I was pumped for this movie. I was so ready. And I think I had a similar experience to you, Kenny. I enjoyed parts of it in the theater. I laughed. I enjoyed the cameos. It was really cool to see some actors in roles that never thought that I'd see again. So that was just a fun
Right.
nostalgia trip. But I kept thinking, to borrow a phrase from Great British Baking Show, it's all style, no substance. And
Mm.
that's really how I feel about this. There's not enough plot here, I think, for a 2 hour long movie. And so after a while, I was just kind of like, what are we doing here? Like, it's fun, had a good time. There's lots of jokes. There's nothing wrong with that, like you said, Kenny. But I was just like, I want more. I want more of a story here. I want more for these characters. I wanted something substantive here, and there just wasn't that. So
Yeah.
I think similarly to you, after my theater experience, the more that I've thought about this movie, the more disappointed I've gotten in it. So I also am kind of struggling to figure out how to talk about this, because I understand the people that had a great time and it's a great movie for them, and I just wanted something different. So I'm kind of living in that same tension of, this is my perspective is maybe a little bit mixed, and I understand why people are on different sides of the spectrum when it comes to this movie.
Hmm.
I think it'll be fun for us when we have movies that we have some thoughts about to also talk about at some point in our conversation, like what would we have wanted to see? Because that's always fun and fascinating to see, like what would have made this better or different that it could have been improved on. Um, So I am the delinquent in the group. I did not follow a lot of the Marvel movies. I was like, oh my gosh, this superhero wave, like where's all of the indie movies, blah, 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 blah. So I didn't watch a lot of them until we were leading up to Infinity War and Endgame. And I was like, I need to do my homework, I think. So a lot of the X-Men world too. Like I just never followed those movies or went to go and see them. So y'all, for a lot of this movie, I was like, these are probably really meaningful moments for people that are getting all of those references and stuff, but I was lost. And I've seen other movies that Marvel or you know the big action movies that are franchise movies have done where they've worked even without that context. And so that was fascinating for me as like someone who's not like very plugged into and up to speed on this whole franchise of like comparing this movie to other films that have had a great movie without needing all of that backstory. And so, like, even at the base level, my biggest problem with this, I was expecting some really great, like, chemistry and banter and funny dialogue between our two main leads because they're so different in personality. I think they're so contrasting, so it could make for some really fun moments. And I kept like waiting for it, and I feel like they could have done more. So that's one of the areas I'm like, even without me knowing the full stakes of like who Wolverine is and all of the plot, just give me some fun dialogue and I'm here for it, you know? Like I'll be happy with it.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot that was missing on just like at a base level, even without understanding all of the stakes, who these characters were. I think they could have like more efficiently gotten like someone like me on board with. So it's fascinating to hear people that are plugged into the universe, what their thoughts or critiques might be, having more of that context. And then the other like challenge that I had with this film was it wasn't clear to me what our like overarching goal was. You know, and I think that was like something that made it hard to like continue to invest is like what's our forward momentum? What's the mission? And it's I think usually like there's usually a clear goal or stakes of like, you know, the world is going to get demolished off the face of the planet because of some villain. Like even as simple or straightforward as we're trying to save the world, so this movie felt a little bit wandering. So I was also kind of getting lost of like, what, why are we here again? We're meeting like this crew with I think a lot of the cameos with the others. I'm like, what's our goal here? What's our side quest of something that we need to go do to go complete our main task? So that forward momentum of a central plot line, I think, was also missing for me too. So there was a lot to be desired for me. But it's fascinating to hear some of y'all's thoughts that you know are really plugged into this universe to hear what else you guys thought for what you wanted from this movie.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I hadn't really thought about what I wanted from this movie
Mm,
until you asked. And
yeah,
now that I consider it, one of the things that was really touted about this movie coming into it
yeah,
was Deadpool joins the MCU.
mm.
And then when you watch this movie, he never actually got there,
Yeah.
right? So, out of
Yeah.
what I would have liked to have seen from this movie is him actually interact with the MCU. There's a
Mm.
lot of like Deadpool comics and Deadpool stories where he is. There's a Deadpool series called Deadpool Illustrated, right? It's where he goes through different periods of art and just does
Oh.
his Deadpool thing there, whether that's
Mm.
Vincent Van Gogh, whether it's,
Yes.
animation, cartoons, and different things of that
Wow.
nature. And he actually goes there, right? The story, like the title of the story is fulfilled. It's like you're actually going there. Now the title of this movie of this movie is fulfilled. It is Deadpool and Wolverine, of course. But when you taught us, hey, Deadpool's finally joined the MCU, and other than meeting one particular character in the beginning, you don't really get to see that. So I think it would have been a lot more interesting if he and Wolverine would have traveled to the MCU, to the 616 as they call it, and had an adventure pretty much jumping through different time and events. But I guess you can't really do that because that's literally Endgame. So they're jumping through time and events and things of that nature. But I think that there's a way to do that in a very Deadpool ish way. And I would have liked to have seen Deadpool actually join the MCU instead of being kind of adjacent to it the entire time. I think the most MCU thing about this movie is the Void, the TVA, and the Sling Ring, right? So, other than that, what else really is there that's MCUified about the even the characters that he meets in the Void? We're meeting for the first time, and they're mostly from the Fox universe. So that's not really Deadpool joining the MCU. So that's something I would have liked to have seen.
That's so interesting, especially because thinking back, like in the opening first act, they kind of like gear you up for it, you know? Like he's like, I'm going
Hmm.
to like jump into this universe now. So you're kind of like primed for it from the marketing, primed for it from the first act too. You're like getting riled up and excited for
Right.
it. And then it's a little bit of a letdown when it doesn't happen. Yeah, they're stuck in the void for quite a long time.
Yeah, which I think is a huge mistake with this movie because I think it showed me that the Void isn't really that interesting, even through like the Loki show, which I love both seasons of that show. You spend a little bit of time in the Void because it's a void. There's not much to do there except for I guess meet other versions of yourself and meet geez, I'm forgetting his name. The He Who Remains, right?
Mm.
And so that's it. That's the only place. That's the only things that they visit in that world, and then they get themselves out of there because the more important, the more interesting things are outside of that. And it's called a void for a reason. There's nothing there. So, yeah,
Yeah, and I think when you've seen Loki and they handled it so well in that, and then to return to the void in this, and it's not utilized as well, it's kind of a disappointment. Like there were
right,
multiple times in this movie where I was like, well, I just want to go watch that other thing instead. Like, can can I just
yeah,
leave this and go to that because that was handled better? And I think it speaks to one of the things that I wanted to see in this movie, which was you kind of touched on it, Jen. Like, I wanted more plot and I wanted more stakes, because it is kind of meandering. They have this kind of hazy goal of saving the world, but it's not really clear, and we don't feel the effects of it. They talk about it, and Deadpool talks about, oh, he needs to save the world because of the TVA and all of the things. And honestly, like once you start with like multiverse and time travel and the timeline is being erased and all of that, it's very abstract. And I think that this
right,
film could have benefited from some really tangible, tactile villains, and like for us to really understand the stakes, because we only see Deadpool interacting with his friends like once, and then we don't really revisit it again, and we don't revisit the stakes, we don't revisit the amount of time that he has. There's no ticking clock or sense of urgency. It's just kind of like, okay, we're just gonna pal around, we're gonna get into some fights, we're gonna meet some friends, and then oh yeah, we have to save the world in the third act. Like it didn't have this clear sense of pace and structure and forward momentum, and I think that that's really needed in an action movie like this.
yeah. I think if you bring even if you're doing a similar plot to this, I think you make a great point, Jen, of not feeling as close or not feeling as tangible. I think one of the things that would have helped it feel tangible is if when Deadpool goes on to recruit Wolverine, he brings along Colossus and Negasonic, and Domino wasn't in this movie. I would have loved to have seen her again. I don't
Yes,
know if it was
times
like a
two, yes.
some yeah, sometimes we're like, hey, why didn't they get hurt? Sometimes like, Marvel makes that call and they're like, no, I don't feel like, or I'm scheduled. So we can't always be like, hey, they should have got. Sometimes they do make that. I'm sure one of the characters that are in this movie, high level, one of the characters that are in this movie who show up as a cameo, the person who their movie spun out of, they probably made the phone call to him first. And I'm being super vague for purposes. Uh,
We can include a spoiler here, maybe, so we can have full free reign, and you don't have to like police the thoughts because I know it can get
sure.
hard too. Sometimes we've been recording, and I'll just say something. And I'm like, oh, in editing, I need to put the spoiler earlier. So if you haven't watched Deadpool and Wolverine, this is your spoiler
Mhm.
because we are gonna talk about all of. There's so many too. There's so many like surprise cameos and whatnot. So this is
Yeah.
your spoiler. Go watch it before listening to the rest of the episode because we're diving in. Okay, now you've got full freedom.
Gotcha. Thank you. So, Elektra, right? Elektra is a character. I was going to say Elektra is a great character, but I mean, maybe other people feel that way. She's not a character who I was necessarily excited for, other than the prospect of doing the multiverse thing.
Mm.
But I'm sure Feige and the crew called Ben Affleck first about his Daredevil to come in because that's the more. Even though that movie's maligned too, it's definitely less maligned than the Elektra movie. So I'm sure they made that phone call, and I'm sure they made several others. I mean, if you're reaching out to Wesley Snipes from Blade, I'm sure they reached out to some other people too, right? And I feel like I forgot what my point was before that, but in general,
Yeah.
I feel like one of the biggest issues is you took you had all the stakes in the beginning of the movie, which
Mm.
is the people you loved, and you kept them there, and then
Mm.
you go on this adventure to do something to save them all, right? Bring along Colossus, bring along Negasonic adult warrior because she doesn't look like a teenager anymore, and bring along Yukio. I love Deadpool and Yukio's relationship, even though it's just like, hey,
Hi.
I love their relationship. But yeah,
No, that's a really, really great point around like the stakes almost need to be in danger, but they're like safely back at
hmm
home in the multiverse
right,
tucked away. And like we cognitively know, right? Like, because they said a bunch of times, and Deadpool wants to matter and he wants to save his timelines, but like we either didn't get enough time to like really soak in the like the warm fuzzies of that relationship at the beginning to then get sent on this
hmm
journey, or like you mentioned, Kenny, bring them along and they're in danger and they're getting caught and they're hurt and they're in trouble, so that we can constantly feel the sense of danger. Because one thing that I was thinking about that I think is a challenge of this concept of the multiverse is that inherently we then zoom out so big that there theoretically is like thousands and thousands of multiverse versions of you. So inherently the investment cognitively that I have into this one strand gets diluted because I'm like, well, there's another million more versions of you, right? Versus
right,
obviously, like in our
yeah,
non multiverse, normal, Earth context, like that is your one strand, that is your one character to invest in. But the minute you like multiply them out and we also get to see a million other Deadpools, you're like, there's got to be enough of that grip and that hold, even more so of the emotional stakes because we have the multiverse, to be like, no, actually, like so invested in this one Deadpool and all of this one Deadpool's friends. I think that the Spider Verse series does an amazing job of this. Like, it expands out to the multiverse, but somehow we end up having like our heart grows big enough to care about all of these like Spider Pig and all of the other ones too, because they somehow like built that character connection. Whereas this one, you're like, well, I mean, you're one of 1,000 million strands. What else will get me to like emotionally invest deeply? And they're not
yeah,
even there, right? So there might have been something with Deadpool's relationship with Wolverine, like putting more of the focus on Wolverine that like maybe could have worked for that emotional core. Um, in another version of this movie, I don't know, but I felt like there's a lot missing personally. Maybe like this is again my lack of investment in Wolverine in general beforehand, but there's such a journey that Wolverine goes on from feeling like the worst Wolverine in his strand to the best. But like I didn't feel that journey went on to get to the end, you know? Um so I wanted more for that character's growth too, and how Deadpool is like somehow the exact thing he needed to like draw that out of him or something, warm and fuzzy. But we get to the end where they're like buddies and they believe in each other and all that kind of stuff. But kind of like I wasn't sure how we got here by the time we get to that ending
yeah. I
moment.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's never a moment where Deadpool looks to Wolverine and like props him up and say, "Hey, you might have been the worst Wolverine in your universe, but that's something that happened in the past." Some good speech for Deadpool, which is not in Deadpool's character. So there is a Deadpool way to do that for sure, but it's not something that ever happened. And I don't even think Wolverine had. Well, there's several. I enjoyed Hugh Jackman's performance. There's several issues with that iteration, including the notion that he's the worst Wolverine. There's nothing that he did, in my opinion, that would make him the worst Wolverine. Like he wasn't home one day, and
Mm.
the X Men got attacked from humans. I know he feels guilty because he was never there, so I guess you can put that there because he was always trying to be a loner. But from an outside view, as a fan looking at it, and I think that part of the reason why
Mm.
I feel this way is because it was a lot of tell and not show. Like if I would have seen that, even as Cassandra Nova's like in his head with her fingers through his face, was super creepy to look at. So they did a really good job with that. She's telling his story, and he's like telling his story, but we're never seeing his
Mm.
story. We're just seeing his facial reactions to them. So you never really allow us to see what he went through. We're just hearing about it, and what I'm hearing doesn't sound like we've seen a lot of superhero characters do a lot of crazy stuff, a lot. So it's like I wasn't home one day and everybody died. It's like, well, I mean, compared to compared to Tony Stark building Ultron and destroying Sokovia. I don't know, man. You're kind of on the lower side of worst characters. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I didn't feel that part of it. So that was something I didn't necessarily connect with as much as I would have wanted to. And the funny thing is that this is Deadpool's first time meeting this Wolverine too. So they really don't have a relationship either. So I don't know. That feels not as strong. But I will say, piece of praise I'll give it is the conversation that, or argument rather, that Wolverine and Deadpool had in the minivan in the middle of the forest. That was great. I loved that. Even getting Wade to shut up, and then Wade turns to him and said, "I'm going to fight you now." That was great. But yeah, other than that, I don't really think they had much to connect from each other to.
Yeah, I think probably the most emotionally powerful moment for Wolverine is that conversation that he has with X-23. And that was a powerful
Mm,
moment, I thought. And
very
that's,
much.
I think,
Yeah,
purely because of Hugh Jackman's performance. Like in that scene, I was watching it and I was like, Hugh Jackman, you are too good for this movie. Like you are just out acting everybody else. But
mhm,
that was the most emotional moment of the whole thing, and it's not even between the two title characters. And so it's just kind of like, okay, like that's cool. And like you said, Kenny, like really, that's it? Like I don't know.
yeah,
I in the Fox X-Men movies, Logan Wolverine was always off by himself. Like that's just kind of
yep,
par for the course for Wolverine. So it just didn't, it felt like way too dramatic for what he actually did. But whatever, it's fine. We had to have an emotional moment so that he would then show up for the big fight and it's this dramatic reveal, and it's like, okay, I see what we're doing. But I just wish that relationship had been stronger, especially because in the first two Deadpool movies, Deadpool is constantly talking about Wolverine and he loves Wolverine and he wants to be best friends with Wolverine. And then we get
yeah,
here and it's just kind of lackluster. It's kind of disappointing the more you think about it.
yeah. I had watched all three movies leading up into uh, Deadpool and Wolverine, or the three movies, the two Deadpool movies and Logan, and I was actually surprised by how much Deadpool mentions Wolverine in those first two movies. He talks about him a lot. I was like, oh, so this is great. We're going right into him finally meeting the guy who's been wanting to work with.
Yeah, we needed banter and emotions between the two of them. And I feel like we didn't have either of them. I actually think that if we had even just one of the two, this would have been fine. You know what I mean? Like we would have been satisfied. Obviously, it's going to be incredible if you can do the fun banter and then give us like some really emotional connection between them and how they help each other grow and all this
Mhm.
good stuff. But even just having one out of the two, I think would have made this like a significantly better movie because you're either having a
Yeah,
good time or you're in your feels, and either of those two things are great. And if you can do both at the same time, like that's a hit out of the park. But both of those felt missing. I feel like it's not because of the performance; it's really the writing, the dialogue, the
right.
screenwriting, and the plot that I think they just didn't have enough to work with. Because I kept thinking like they don't feel like they have chemistry. Like they're not really bonding the way that you expect to see in this like almost buddy comedy, like two strong male protagonist leads that you're like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be a hoot. They just didn't seem to have that flow. You're right, Kenny. I think the best moment between the two of them was honestly when they're fighting each other in that minivan scene. Great chemistry there, like they're just it's so punchy, it's
Yeah,
so fun. But you there's so much expectation because they're also both two very charismatic actors that you're like, this is going to be a double whammy when you throw them two together. So the fact that it didn't land, it felt really flat and kind of empty. I think is indicative of the writing more so than performances, and I think that's where they just didn't have enough to work with. Because I kept thinking to myself, this should be like slam dunk chemistry wise. So
hmm yeah. I definitely thought that they had chemistry. I thought that the plot didn't do anything with it. Clearly, these two are phenomenal, phenomenal actors. Hugh Jackman is out of this world. I mean, he's in one of my favorite movies, two of my favorite movies, really. Prisoners, he's incredible, And my favorite Nolan movie, which I just talked about yesterday, The Prestige. The Prestige was he's also amazing in. And what is he not amazing in? And then you have Ryan Reynolds also, who is so committed to this character. He is so great at fulfilling this character. I know, like people say, he's playing himself, which I think is a bit true because I feel like he relates to Deadpool, so he plays Deadpool really well. But even beyond that, his commitment to do things such as like keep the mask on almost the entire movie. That's not something that you see a lot. Like he's in that suit most of the movie. A lot of times, like, and I don't blame actors because I'm sure it's uncomfortable to be in the super suit for the entire run for all of filming must be super uncomfortable. And he's in that suit for most, and that suit looks like it is sewed on, right? It is super tight,
Yeah, like peel that off of you with all the sweat that comes in there. That's
right?
wet.
Yeah. Yeah, so you could definitely tell that they are committed to this, but I don't know. I just felt like the plot didn't live up to their performances.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of the plot is one of the things that I was thinking about because that to me is the most MCU like part of this. Like it's a very MCU
Hmm.
plot. And obviously like time variance authority is introduced in Loki and like all of that. So and like the interconnectedness of it all and feeling like you have to have all of this other knowledge to really like get it. Like there's a lot about this that feels like an MCU movie to me, but it's
Yeah.
kind of like the negative parts of an MCU movie. And I don't know. There's just something about the previous two Deadpool movies that felt so subversive and so different than what we were used to seeing. Even the second movie did a really good job of like making fun of superhero team ups and like kind of like
Yeah.
spoofing on that. And I feel like they
Yep.
tried to do that with the multiverse concept in this movie, but it didn't click the way that it did in the other two. And I'm very curious like why that is. Like did they just try to do too many things? Did they try to stick this into the MCU too much and it just kind of I don't know, it felt like it kind of removed some of that magic that we came to expect from the first two films. It doesn't feel as
Hmm.
like punchy and like quick and witty as the other two ones, and it's not as insightful with its critique of superhero movies as the first two movies were. And so that was something else that I was a little bit disappointed in.
Yeah, you can almost say that it's pretty blunt with its critique. But that was one of my highlights of the film. But I'll definitely tackle your question about why it feels different. I think it feels different because the first two movies are very personal. They're about him and his life and the people who are in his life and the people who he's learning to allow to be in his life. This is about saving the world, saving the universe, trying to stop a multiversal threat, which is the anchor being, which is a whole nother discussion. But yeah, like the first one, he's fighting cancer, right? And he's trying to get better so that he can spend the rest of his life with Vanessa, and he's trying to deal with that. After he found someone who completed him, they were like peas in a pod. And in the second one, Vanessa dies, and he's trying to get her back, get revenge, and also trying to in a sense, honor Vanessa, who's having those visions about to save that kid who was very deeply connected to Cable's character because in the future he grows up to kill Cable's family. So everybody's deeply connected in these very personal journeys. And I feel like in this one, I feel like one of the flaws with this one is that the the catalyst that makes Deadpool go on this journey is that Vanessa rejects Deadpool and says, "Hey, you are like selfish, and you're not. You only think about yourself." And I'm sitting here watching. I'm like, I just watched the first two movies.
Yeah, same.
When did this happen?
Wait, I had that same exact thought too, and I just like assumed that like okay, I probably missed something and just missing a large gap of context, but like it felt so disconnected because we've seen Deadpool continuously self-sacrifice again and again. So I was like, where are we in the timeline? Like, is this before or after
Right.
the first two movies? Because you're right, like we saw him really give himself so fully to his missions. He sacrifices himself in the second movie for the kid. Like, it's so right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my brain just froze. And and yeah, so that being the catalyst, and yeah, so I think the overarching arching point of what I'm trying to say is the reason why this movie doesn't work as well is because those characters who he formed that bond with didn't come along with him, and then it's about them, but it's not really. It's about his search for relevance and his search to mean something in the universe, which was never a Deadpool. Deadpool doesn't care about the universe or his placement or his meaning anywhere. He just wants to be with Vanessa and his friends. That's and Big Al. Like that's it.
I also didn't buy that Deadpool as a character, based on what we know about him, cares deeply about this like big abstract concept about like I just want to matter for the sake of like me. You know what I mean? Like we can buy that, he's kind of this like smart aleck guy, and when he falls in love, he falls so deeply because they were a piece in the pot. And so everything in the first two movies, it's like it was all for Vanessa, or it was all for the kid that he felt just this connection to that he wanted to save. But just this like abstract philosophical concept of like, oh, I just want to matter as a human being, I think is something that what we know about Deadpool, that's not where his brain would naturally wander to. You know what I mean? He's so like
Right.
ingrained into this tactical space with his relationships that I mean, it's a very human, universal desire to want to matter. But to put it into this character, I think wasn't necessarily the right fit. There's probably another character that they could have done that with, that bigger
Hmm.
concept. But he doesn't care. He's happy to be here, do a job, care for the people that he cares about, and he's kind of like, fuck everything else. I don't really care, Like I care for my people
Yeah.
and I'm gonna protect them with my life, but I'm just here chilling. Like, so I think that disconnect in my brain was also like, what?
Yeah. Because he already matters to the people who he cares about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And that he's the
Yeah.
type of character that like that would be more than enough for him. Like that's all he wants.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very much like Ant-Man in a sense, right?
Mm.
I think the reason why Ant-Man Quantumania didn't work as well is because you took it out of its element. Like you did still have that heist part of it, but you're in the quantum realm, you're in somewhere else. And I know the quantum realm is kind of part of Ant-Man, but it's like the smallest part of it. The real part of it is like I want to be with my daughter, I want to be with my family, and I have to stop this bad guy from stealing this thing to help save in the second one, Ghost or Hank Pym's wife. Like we're still going after the family element here, and you have some of that here, but in the third one, but it's like you've gone bigger than what you actually are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny for an ant, but that it seems that happened in that. So yeah, when you take a character completely out of its element,
Mm.
like that, which I think a lot of people think is typically a good thing, like you're helping to stretch the character. But I feel like in a movie where you only get one of these maybe every 2 years, if you're lucky, with
Mm-hmm.
the MCU, how much time was between Doctor Strange 1 and Doctor Strange 2, right? You want if I'm only going to get this character like this one time in these few years, I want it to really, really mean something. Um, so yeah, if you take them completely out of what I know, then it gets kind of weird, right?
Okay, so I have an alternate plot idea that I just came up with that I would like to
Yes.
pitch you guys.
I love it.
Let's see how this goes. I don't know how we would get here, but what if Wolverine in a different multiverse, because Logan is dead, so we have to do something, is in danger? And somehow that message, like he's able to like send out an SOS or something and like call for somebody in the universe to come
Mm.
help him. And it just happened to come to our Deadpool from some reason that you can explain away. And our Deadpool gets so excited. This is the moment that he has been waiting for. Maybe he had like all of his Google alerts set up for like Wolverine or something, and like something pops up. I don't know. And so then that is his quest. He has to go and try and save Wolverine. And then that's where that like witty banter could come in. They could have that relationship. Logan is probably going to reject it because he's not going to want to get saved by Deadpool for whatever reason. And so then that can lead to some conflict there as well. So it's a very like narrow focus. It fulfills the
Hmm.
like Deadpool and Wolverine of the title, and it's not an abstract premise, and it's in line with who Deadpool is as a person.
Mhm.
So this is perfect. That's great. That is amazing. Because what Wolverine can do is he can be in trouble, just like you mentioned. He's sending out this message to the X-Men of the time and whoever, which is a conversation I actually had with somebody today about how that timeline doesn't work because Logan was in 2029 and this was way back when, but that's a whole nother discussion. And he sends it back and he sends it and a beacon pretty much glows on the time slipping thing that Cable gave him because he obviously still has it because he's going to the MCU and he gets that message there. Right. And
Yeah,
exactly
yeah,
as
yeah,
you,
yeah.
I have no other changes. Exactly how you mentioned it. He gets on, he sees it. It's from Logan. It's from Wolverine from a different. He's so excited to go to this other universe, and he gets there. He's like, "Who the f are you? Who are you?" And through naturally through Deadpool's personality, he's like, "I do not want to be anywhere near this guy. He's not serious about this mission, and he's helping him save something or save Wolverine, just like you said, and they somehow end up in the MCU, and they have to like follow that person through that. Very similar to the way in Doctor Strange too, they ended up in so many different parallel like Earths, which is much.
Mhm.
I'm actually curious about this. A lot of people have said. Now, actually, I don't want to get off your point because you made such a great point. So I'll finish with saying this. That was awesome. I love that idea because it's the thing that Deadpool has been building up to for two movies. I want to be with Wolverine, so now he gets his chance. That makes so much more sense, right? Yeah, but I do have this question. A lot of people I've seen say that this is what Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness should have been. And I've seen that, and I'm confused by what people mean by that. So I wondered if either of you felt the same, or if you are equally as confused as I am
Sarah
about
looks.
that desire. Because I really, even I didn't love Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I did like it though. It's not terrible at all. But I don't understand that what the comparison even is because they're not even close to the same like
Type of plot.
thing
Mm.
at all. So what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, no, I am also confused by that. Yeah, I can't even come up with a way to like make that make sense in my brain. So we're gonna have to
I
find
It's
don't
not
understand it.
logic.
find
Yeah.
those people and ask some
Hmm.
questions because
Ask some
I now
questions.
have some questions. That's
Is it the
fascinating.
concept
Yeah.
of the multiverse that I did not watch that movie? But is it like the
Hmm.
multiverse bending of it all that is interesting to them? That they feel like is connective tissue?
There's a lot of like multiverse bending in both movies. I actually think that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness does the multiverse better than this one because they do go visit a completely different universe with its own set of characters who are not in a barren wasteland. There's a lot of established world there. And when they finally leave that place, they go to another one with an evil Doctor Strange. And that's
Yeah.
weird and has its own thing, right? So they felt all of these places feel lived in much more than the Void does. So, yeah, other than just being fun, right? It's fun, it's funny, we're having a good time, we're laughing our behinds off. There are cool cameos, but there's also really cool cameos in Multiverse of Madness,
Mhm.
including Professor X, which I was like, I don't know why they put that in the marketing. Similar, I don't know why they put Laura X-23 in the marketing for this one. I was like, what are you doing? That's when I deleted Threads for like 3 days until I saw the movie. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, you're right, because the multiverse is interesting when we can visit the multiverse strands. You know what I mean? It's not interesting if we're in this subterranean desert land where we
Right.
don't get to see all them. And like, I know there's that shot at the end where we get like all the different types of Deadpools, but like that was a really short moment that I was honestly like, I would love to see just like a Deadpool and a nice pool movie, and just have them like just
Yeah.
like freaking tearing each other to shreds for this whole time while they're trying to
Hmm.
like complete a mission and they're failing miserably. Like I want that movie.
Yeah.
Something that like that's most interesting is when you can play out. I think that's what Everything Everywhere All at Once does so well, is that like every strand is lived in that you visit. Um, and so then we end up spending a lot of time in the void. And my other problem with the void is this really long Furiosa Mad Max joke that I think lasts like way too long. It was funny for a
Yeah.
bit, but like it kind of drags a little bit where you're like, oh, okay, like I kind of get it now. But like they just kind of keep living it. I was like, come up with another idea of another desert like reference that we could do that could be really fun and interesting. But they kind of like sit in that joke, I think, a little bit too long too. So I got kind of bored and checked out with that whole sequence as well. Didn't feel sharp.
Yeah.
And the first two Deadpools are so sharp in their jokes. Like they're in and they're out, and they know they have that emotional intuition to know when we're done and we're on to the next big one. So I think that was something
Yeah.
else. Like the intuition's a little bit off
Agreed.
here.
It's funny because George Miller, I saw this right before Furiosa came out. He said it's very hard to make the desert interesting. I was like, yeah, that's true. And then watching this movie, I'm like, it's very hard to make a barren wasteland interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but I had an idea to add to your idea. I think Nice Pool should have been the main villain.
Oh,
Oh my
yes.
gosh.
I love that.
It just
Wow.
makes so much more sense.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And honestly, Nice Pool's kind of creepy, you know? You're like,
Exactly.
I'm uncomfy every time he's on screen. He's
He's
got that like terrifying smile that you're like, there's so much more
right.
behind you. So I love that idea.
He's got this Joel Osteen self righteousness
Yeah.
kind of look to him, and I think that the self righteousness of Nice Pool versus the vulgarity but with a heart of Deadpool, I think those two are natural opposites, and he would have made a
Mm.
much better villain. And you can still have him take Dog Pool from Nice Pool because I thought that was
That
a
was
good
great.
thing. Because obviously, you don't want pets with terrible people as owners, so
Yeah.
his whole mission is to rescue Dog Pool from Nice Pool.
Honestly, though,
I love
that's
it.
not bad.
Honestly,
Like,
that's some grounded stakes right there.
yes, we
Yeah.
all love John Wick. We know how far people will go
Right.
for their dogs.
For their dogs.
Yes,
Yeah.
this works. I
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah. Oh, actually, to add to your example, Sarah, you find out that the culprit behind Wolverine's suffering is Nice Pool in that
Mm.
other universe, and it's just all kind of, and then that's why Wolverine doesn't want
Oh,
Deadpool's help because
yeah.
he's been negatively impacted by the other Nice Pool, who was sent. I'm making stuff up as I go. Who was sent on a mission to take out the X-Men from different universes,
Mm.
and he finds out that Nice Pool is the one who was the hired gun because
Yeah.
Deadpool is a hired gun or was one in the past, and that's who he has to go and defeat.
Mm.
And yeah, so and you have his own versions of Yukio and Domino and
Mm.
Vanessa and stuff like that. And then you actually make it matter because now, oh, there's an evil version of Wade and all these people and stuff like that.
Mm.
Because Wade, from the outset, if you just look at Wade from as a normal person, you're like, that person's crazy. Like he needs to be in jail. Like he needs to be away from us. But you've been following him, so you know he's got a heart. So
Mm.
I think that makes the stakes so much better.
That's so
Yeah,
good.
Sarah, you were cooking
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying our movie that we're writing right now. I think that this is a
Yeah,
real
I want to watch
winner.
that movie.
Yeah. Who
My
do we
one
need to
Me
tell?
too.
request. My one request is that we somehow integrate Matthew McFadden somewhere in this movie. I don't care where, but he was so deliciously wonderful to watch on screen, being so devilish, and he's so good at it as Mr. Paradox. So just somewhere in there, we insert
Yeah,
our dude.
it was so weird because I've only seen him in Succession. So seeing him, I don't think I've ever heard him use his
It's British
natural
accent.
born voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, his British accent. So I was like, this is very strange and very like interesting. I was all in for it.
You're like, Tom, you left your COO job at the other company, and you found a new one to work for, a new corporate
Right.
feeling, evil
Yeah.
corporation to sell your soul to.
I was going to say the way that you can keep Tom in it, or
Yeah.
Paradox, Mr. Paradox. In it is you find out that Mr. Paradox is the one who hired Nice Pool to
Oh
go
yeah.
to these different
Good.
universes to take out the X-Men because he feels like the X-Men a better reason than I just don't like the fact that these universes dying take too long. I don't even know why that's
Yeah.
an issue.
He's trying to make like
um,
mercy killing euthanasia for a timeline. And I'm like, just why do you care that much? At least I'm trying to amass power.
has
Cassandra's
nothing
motivation
to
makes
do
more
with
sense.
you.
Yeah.
Right. It's like watching, I don't know, it's like watching someone microwave something in put something in the microwave and then getting mad about how long it takes. That's how long it takes. I'm sorry. Like that's it. So yeah, you just have him like hire him, which I guess would make him the main villain, but it would give him a much better story than
Mm-hmm.
I'm just an
Motivation.
impatient jerk. Because it didn't matter. Yeah.
Okay, so I have another question while we're like brainstorming some stuff. I know, Kenny, you have some feelings
Hmm.
about this anchor being thing, so I do want to give you a chance to air your grievances if you would like. But my question is, would we
Hmm.
also like to submit maybe some other names for an anchor being that might be better choices than Logan? I thought that might
Oh
be a
yeah.
creative
the
exercise.
the first one, because I did think about it immediately. Professor X makes way more sense as the anchor being of the X-Men universe. He is the guy. He's the person who brings all these people together. He's the leader. He's the one who started the school. He just makes a lot more sense for him to be the anchor being because a lot of it revolved around his vision and how he like tried to help steer away or bring together rather human and mutant relations. It just makes so much more sense than Logan, who we love Logan, but he's I don't want to call him just a guy, but he's just he's one of many stories in this universe. And he's not the center of the universe. Well, I guess he is since he's
The
the
anchor
anchor being.
being.
Yeah. So, and I don't even understand how Logan dying would lead to the destruction of the rest. Whether it took
Oh,
1,000 years or a couple days, it's like him. He was driving around Professor X like a couple days ago. I didn't see him do much. I mean, he did help free the kids, but I didn't see him do much on a global scale that was like that. Yeah. So, but yeah. So the anchor being thing, I have issues with it for a couple of reasons. Number one is that it's just another weird random rule
mm,
in all the weird random rules of the multiverse since the multiverse saga started. And we really don't know how the multiverse works still in this world because I think the thing that is really helpful. This is something my friend says all the time, which is if you give me a movie, tell me the rules of the world so I know where I'm at, right? So
I love
essentially,
this.
if you're in a rom com where people are like driving is very normal, like them suddenly turning their cars into hover cars and flying off, it just doesn't make sense in this world. This world has nothing to do with that, right? So the multiverse, we've gotten through the multiverse with broken spells with Spider-Man, with America Chavez punching through multiverses, with who else? Oh yeah, well no, I already said that one. With anchor being with time slipping with the TVA.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different ways that people have. Oh, with Clea at the end of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, just slashing through the multiverse. It's kind of like okay, so what are the rules here? Like, what's stopping this? What's causing this? Why is this happening? Kang had his ship that he was driving through the multiverse and what have you. So right now, the multiverse is just a concept with no rules whatsoever, right? Even in Across the Spider Verse or the Spider Verse movies,
Yeah.
we know how people get through the multiverses. We know how they work. Essentially, we know that you can do a collider, and there's all kinds of things. There's two ways. There's the collider and there's the watches. That's it. That's
Yeah.
the ways that you can get through, right? Um, and with this, we don't even know what the purpose of the multiverse is. So now you entered in a anchor being, and it's like, okay, and maybe it does play in in the future. I'm sure it will because I actually saw an interview with Feige
Hmm.
where someone asked him like, "So is Iron Man the anchor being of the 616?" And he was like, "I'm glad that you're asking that question, and that question came to your mind." He never answered because Feige never answers the question, which is to his credit. But yeah, I guess that's interesting. But it's just like, do we need any more weird and random rules in this universe? Besides the fact that you guys set this concept up, said that Wolverine or your Logan was the anchor being, and to my knowledge, I did watch it twice. To my knowledge, never solved that issue. Is the Wolverine from the other place just an anchor being? Can you just pull people
Right?
out of the universe and say, "Hey, you're my anchor being
Yeah.
now"? So I don't know what happened there. And if you mention or if you notice, we haven't talked about Cassandra Nova at all because
Hmm.
she's so inconsequential to the plot. But yeah, so I don't know what to do with an anchor being, and yeah, I will be cool with an anchor being if it was something that was introduced as the plot and the theme of this
Yeah.
entire saga. The anchor, you don't have to call it the anchor being saga because that sounds cool, but it's not as cool as multiverse. It doesn't sound as cool. But if that was just a thing that we discovered along the way, or made to be a thing, a big thing, then I would have more time for it. But right now, and I've been talking for way too long. But for right now, I was talking to a friend about this. We're
Mm.
dealing with all the things I mentioned about how to get into the multiverse. Then you have Talo and Shang-Chi, and then you have the clandestine and Miss Marvel, their universe that's stacked on top of this universe, and then you have the big eternal not eternal, the celestial that's coming up out
Oh,
of the
yeah,
planet,
yeah.
so you have all these things going on. Oh, then you have Erisham who's coming back to Earth to judge Earth, and it's like, where are we going? What are we doing? So, and
Yes.
maybe it'll be solved, but I guess my thing is, and I'm excited for the future. So this isn't like, oh, I don't want to see any of this stuff, but we have Captain America, we have Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts coming next year, and then Thunderbolts comes out in November, and Avengers Doomsday comes out in May. So between November and May, you have to take all those three movies and prepare me with Shang-Chi being gone for like 6 years now. And
Hmm.
by that time, I think it will be 6 years by that time. And then make me care about all these characters coming together by the time you're done with Thunderbolts and going into that Avengers movie in May.
Hmm.
There has to be at least one more thing between that, probably in February, and none of these characters know each other. They haven't met. They have no
Mm.
relationships. So I'm sorry, I went on a whole different spiel. But
Love it.
the purpose is introducing the anchor being is just like, okay, so now I got to think about and worry about this, right? So, and some of those things were introduced in TV shows that very few people watched. So
Yeah.
what
People
are we
like
doing?
me.
So
Honestly, people like me, where I'm like,
yeah,
I cannot hold all of these things in my head. It's a lot of homework.
yeah,
I need to like take notes with my cheat sheet as I go to the
hmm,
movies. Like this is a lot. I have a job, you know?
yeah,
Like I'm trying to use my brain
right.
cells less. Yeah, yeah. We love a good rant. We love a good rant.
We do. And
It's so
you are,
satisfying.
yeah,
So satisfying.
you're speaking my
And
language
I'm excited
because,
about all those things that are coming out. That's the crazy part.
Yeah.
I'm still excited.
well, and that's good. We love to hear that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Hmm.
I would like to submit two anchor beings ideas
Okay.
that I had. One, well, okay, so originally, I I don't know why I didn't put it together that Logan was going to be the anchor being initially, probably because it didn't make sense, but I didn't. And
Hmm.
so my
Hmm.
first thought was knowing that the anchor being had died. I was like, oh, is the anchor being Betty White? Because that just like
Hey,
that's a good one. Um,
that's a great one.
and then my other entry that I would like to make for an anchor being, and we are recording this in the middle of the Olympics, so I would like to nominate Snoop Dogg to be our anchor being.
That makes so much sense for our universe.
Right?
It makes so much sense because he is literally everywhere.
Yeah.
He's commenting on everything from water polo to it. It doesn't matter. Snoop is there for us and with us, whether it's on Martha Stewart's cooking show,
Yeah.
or at the Olympics, or at the dog competitions that happen throughout the year.
Yes.
He's there. And he's been with us since I want to say 92. So he's been around.
Mm.
So that makes a lot of sense. I love it.
Amazing. I'm curious everybody's thoughts about the 2000s soundtrack because I mean, like they were hits, they were bangers. It was awesome. I think my favorite was the Bones fight scene at the beginning, interspersed with some NSYNC
Agreed.
dancing from that iconic music video. So it was great to start out with that. And I think as the movie kept going, I was like, there's a theme here, but like it's just kind of like, oh, I remember that song, but I feel like it didn't integrate into the movie as much as they did at that with that awesome opening scene. So I'm curious your thoughts on if that worked for you, or if you were kind of like, I mean, this is fun. I remember all these songs. It's kind of nostalgic to like revisit them. But they weren't as funny to me as some of the ways that the first two Deadpool movies would play with music and cut them into action scenes and play with them a little bit more. They just felt like, here's a song that you used to listen to. Look at it again. Listen to it again. And then we're like on to the next scene. So I feel like they either could have done more with it or give us something a little bit different. So I'm curious if that worked for y'all. Some of those hits, 2000s hits.
The opening one was great.
So good.
I absolutely, the dancing, it was just amazing. I absolutely loved it. And there are some other ones that with songs I recognize but don't remember the name of,
Yeah.
that were also great. I think the difference between the first two and
Mm.
this one is, I could be totally wrong about this, but in the first two, it wasn't with every fight. And I feel like the
Mm.
issue with this one is that every single major fight had a song to it. And even like the Bring 'em Out song, a song that I absolutely love, didn't fit that at
Scene.
all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're bringing out Wolverine, which I guess was the surprise for like the Bring 'em Out thing. But who didn't think he was going to be a part of it? So when they were like make the big reveals of Wolverine's here, it's like he's been here the whole time. What are we talking?
Yeah.
So I thought that they were mostly good. I thought that was the only really one that really like didn't work as well.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the one with the end fight where Blade and Gambit and when they're all fighting like the other minions, I didn't think that one worked as well either. But the other ones I thought were great. There's more good than bad when it comes to the soundtrack songs.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bring 'em Out one was kind of like, I don't know if this works. This doesn't make sense for the context of what we're doing here. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. The Bye 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 one for sure.
Yeah, they started strong.
Too strong. Yes.
Yeah. There wasn't really anywhere else to like. They couldn't go up. They couldn't beat that one because they started so strong. So I think that's definitely part of it. But I think some of the songs were really effective. You know, I enjoyed some of them. I think for me, it was almost like, oh, that's cute, that's funny, and then it kept going, and I was like, okay, this is fine.
Law of diminishing
you
return.
can keep
really.
going. Yeah. That's really, I think, how I felt. I would chuckle, and then it would kind of wear off.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
All right. Any other last big thoughts before we wrap? We hit them all.
Yeah. I think my only other thought was I was very happy to see that Marvel was very self-aware about the downturn of
they're joining at a low point.
They did it with the perfect person. Yeah, they did it with the perfect person because he hasn't been a part of it, so he's looking from an outside view. So I thought that was really smart. But I'm glad that they did it in a multiverse movie, basically saying, "Hey, this hasn't been good, but we're pressing forward and trying to get better and going forward." So I thought that was really cool. Other than that, yeah, those are my final thoughts on that.
I loved that we got to see Blade. So shout out to Wesley Snipes. Blade, that movie has problems, but it rocks. So just so glad that he showed up. The whole time I was just like, man, I need to go home and watch Blade again. That was a fun movie. So everyone go watch Blade. That movie rocks.
Please.
It was great to see him in action again.
Have you seen Blade, Jen?
I haven't. I told you I'm a delinquent.
Okay. So definitely
in the
watch
superhero
Blade.
action franchise world.
Yeah. Blade is one of the great. Blade, a lot of people say, is the reason why we have the MCU today. Came out in
Oh my
97,
gosh.
96, 97, 98.
Okay.
Yeah. And for you, Sarah, which entrance do you think is better? The club scene in Blade that starts Blade, or this bye 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 scene that starts Deadpool?
Oh,
Blade. Gotta go Blade.
I agree.
no
It's so
questions.
good. It's so iconic.
No
Yeah,
hesitation there.
Oh, Jen,
She was
it's so
confident in
good.
her answer.
You're just like plopped
yeah,
right into the action. Oh, it's so fun.
100%.
All right. Well, this was our review and discussion of Deadpool and Wolverine. We shared a lot of thoughts, a lot of rants, some rewrites, and also some things that we loved about the movie. You can find it available out in theaters. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Movies and Us. And a big thank you to you, Kenny, for joining and being a part of this conversation, sharing all of your takes. We loved it. So much fun. Where can people find more of you on the interwebs and follow you?
Well, you can find me on YouTube at Kenny Sparks. YT is, if you want to type that in fully, you can, and you'll definitely find me. Or you can just type in Kenny Sparks, because I have the privilege of being the top Kenny Sparks, even though I don't have that many subscribers. Thank God there's not any more Kenny Sparks. So you can find me there, and you can also find me on Threads at Kenny Sparks 90. And to that point, Instagram as well. So those are the two places I am the most. And yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting you all and hearing from you.
Love it. We'll include all of that in the show notes for where you can go follow and connect more with Kenny. All right, well, our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a review letting us know your thoughts about Deadpool and Wolverine. What did you want to see? What did you hope to see? Were you satisfied? You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at moviesandUsPod, or you can email us at moviesandUsPod@gmail.com. We will be back next week to throw it back a little bit. We're going to discuss the classic film, The Favorite. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you very soon.